Hello, everybody. Do you have the communication competence of a leader? And what does that entail? I'm Linda Katz-Wilner, the founder and president of Successfully Speaking, and I am so excited for today's interview. Today, our guest is a friend, colleague, and co-presenter on topics such as communication, leadership, listening skills, and DEI conversations. My guest today is my dear friend, Kashonna Marrow. Kashonna is the president of Simply Kashonna and SK Leading Forward. Welcome, Kashonna Marrow.
Thank you so much, Linda. It is an absolute honor, always a pleasure to just be with you. We just love being around each other, working together, and always the synergy is exactly what it needs to be. So thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited about talking.
Oh, sure. And my biggest challenge is to limit this. I don't think we have the 3 hours that we like to have to talk and collaborate, but we will narrow it down to some of the essential questions and conversations that we love to have.
Yes, we'll do the best that we can.
The best we can, absolutely. So let's start with the first question, and that is, what are the barriers that we have to successful and effective communication?
That is an excellent question, Linda. One of the things I think is a major barrier is communicating in a way that you grew up with, especially if it's ineffective communication. Um, Most times, our upbringing has a huge impact on the way we are communicating, not realizing that the people that we are communicating to have different backgrounds and different experiences, different exposures. That means that we must be versatile in our communication. We have to be flexible and fluid if we want to effectively communicate. When we talk about that those differences, we're really tapping into cultural competency. Making sure that we understand that people are from different cultures, different ethnicities, and all of those things, even regions. All of
Mhm.
those are very important, and it takes a level of social skill to be able to tap into that to ensure that you are communicating in the way, not that you want to communicate, but
Mm.
in the way that others need you to communicate to ensure that there is understanding and clarity along the way.
And that's wonderful. And because I deal with international cultures and we've talked about this before, can
Yes.
you give me an example, Kashana, of a situation where you have to really pay attention when you're speaking to that person? What would be an example of that?
Absolutely, Linda. One of the things that we stress a lot of times, and Linda, you and I have talked about this, is eye contact.
Hmm.
And sometimes we can misread the person not giving us eye contact
Hmm.
when that's actually our thing, but it may not be the thing, if you will, of the other person due to their cultural experience or their culture. We find a lot of times in the Asian community, people don't look at you in the eye. And if you are not, again, socially or culturally aware, you may be easily offended by that. But being aware definitely causes us to pause and to engage with them again in the way that they want to be engaged with or they need to be engaged with. A lot of times, we're thinking about how we want to be engaged in terms of communication, but I talk a lot about the platinum rule. And that
Hmm.
platinum rule simply says, do unto others how they would have you do unto them. It really takes the attention off of ourselves and puts it on the person who is indeed decoding the message.
And how many of us think about the golden rule because we grew up learning about that, do unto others as we would have others do unto us. And it doesn't
Yes.
always work.
It doesn't always work. I mean, the thing about the platinum rule is I think that it complements the golden rule. So there
Mhm.
is an element, yes, of the golden rule that we must keep in place. I also believe that we have to learn how to treat ourselves better. And so, with that being said, the platinum rule really complements that. And it lets us know that we're not the only ones in the room.
Mhm.
Sometimes we can think we are great communicators, right? I'm a wonderful communicator until you start working with someone else
And
or
until
until
you Until
until
you
you
realize that being a good communicator is also listening.
Ooh, that's a big one. That's a big one. Absolutely. It's more than you talking. It's about actively, effectively listening. So you are absolutely correct on that.
And Kashan, I want to jump onto something you mentioned before because I've experienced this so much with my clients and that with the eye contact. And early in my career, I worked with a doctor from India who was living here in the United States. And the way he explained it to me is that it was a sign of respect to
Mm.
not have eye contact with somebody who is an elder.
Ooh.
So it was limited to that. Maybe for somebody younger, he would look right at that person. But
Hmm.
he had to learn in the United States, if he was going to practice here, that if he didn't look at the elder patients, they might feel he didn't care.
That is so
And
good.
so he had to shift to learn what the culture was, or perhaps even to explain it to somebody, if that's
Now,
outside of his
uh,
help.
here's the thing, Linda. I love what you're saying here, and you and I work together in this DEI
Mhm,
conversations, and we have these conversations about this very thing.
mhm,
One of the things I appreciate about that information is that that person had an opportunity to ask.
mhm,
And when we're talking about effective communication, especially in leadership, there has to be an ask.
mhm,
If you're wondering why someone isn't communicating with you a certain way, or why someone doesn't look at you a certain way, or
mhm,
whatever the case, whatever your expectation may be, if that expectation is not communicated, then we can't really hold them accountable.
mhm,
So, what can we do to open up that conversation and start asking questions? It may simply be, well, Linda, I noticed that when I speak to you, you don't look at me. What can you help me to understand if something is going on, if I may have offended? Like, put it on yourself and
mhm,
get curious. Get
mhm.
curious about that other person and that culture, or even their background or experience, so that you can have a better communication with them. It really opens it up. The ask opens it up.
And that's for leaders, but isn't that for everybody to have
Absolutely.
better communication? It's not about that I know everything, so I'll tell you what to do.
No,
I
no,
need to observe what's going on. And we've talked about this before, that if all of a sudden I'm talking to you and I see your expression change, if I'm the leader, or really any person, but as a leader, Kashana, what's happening? That's
yes,
so important. Those are those golden moments that we have to take advantage of.
yes. Don't let them pass you by. Really, we talk about pause, Linda, and I always say respect the pause.
Mhm,
If there is something that kind of triggers you in any way, then find out what it is that's triggering you, respect and honor the pause.
mhm,
And then if you need to ask a question to gain clarity, that's better than holding it in, and just, sometimes when we hold things in, it builds up a sense of frustration, and that can damage a relationship.
mhm,
But if I have time to sit and to think about, how I want to approach you, so that I can make sure that I'm framing it in a respectful
mhm.
way, then it comes off better and I have an opportunity to know you better.
And you just said 2 different things. You alluded to 2 different things. One is, of course, the pause, but
Mhm.
you said, "Don't just hold it in."
Mm-mm. No.
Now that's a very long pause, holding it in. But the other part is don't have that knee-jerk reaction because that's not going to be helpful either.
Yeah, but that comes, Linda, with a lot of self work. I think that you have to be aware, if you will, and I don't want to talk too much about emotional intelligence, but I
Mhm,
think emotional intelligence plays a huge part in
mhm,
communication. One of the first competencies of or core elements of emotional intelligence is self awareness,
mhm,
understanding your triggers, understanding what is that thing that bothers me, and then tracking it to find out where did it come from, what is the root of this issue. Because sometimes if you're communicating with someone and you find yourself offended by something that they do
mhm,
or say, it has nothing to do with them more than it has to do with
mhm,
something that you have not dealt with in your past. And that
mhm,
unhealed trauma sometimes is brought into a present relationship that can do a lot of harm and damage. So I believe that when we're talking about effective communication, we got to make sure that we kind of tie in the level of emotional intelligence that's
mhm.
needed to have productive conversations and build healthy relationships.
Mhm. Mhm. So the pause is more or less a tool,
Hmm.
but pausing and then reacting, if you don't have the emotional intelligence that you just said, then you're missing a step in there. That's so important.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Engaging in your thinking before you engage in conversation is
Mhm.
going to be key to your success. And so many times culture dictates to us, if you have something to say, just say it. You
Mhm.
know, say what's on your mind, or I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. We say things like that. But the truth of the matter is that piece of your mind that you're sharing in that moment may not be the right moment, nor is it to the right person, which can definitely, it can create a barrier, if you will, to your advancement in your company and your organization. So make sure that when you're pausing, you understand what's at stake.
Mhm.
Effective communicators understand what's at stake. It's like taking an aerial view of your career and saying, this is where I want to be. Now let me make sure that I am communicating strategically in order to make sure I get there.
Mhm. I'm going to add something. It was about a conversation we actually had the other day. And another piece might be that perhaps I said something to you that I didn't get a reaction from,
Mm,
but I had some remorse about what I said.
yes,
And
yes,
we actually had that happen to us,
we did.
correct?
We did. We had a
And
great conversation around that.
so
Yes.
just bringing it forward, and it doesn't make you weak, be it the leader or not the leader, but it doesn't make you weak, but bringing something forward, I think then enriches the relationship.
Oh,
So I
yes.
remember saying something, you said, "Oh, it didn't even bother me," but I thought it could have.
Yes,
So
and I
just
love that about you, Linda. That because really character, when I think about character, character is not what you do in front of people.
mm,
It's what you do behind the scenes when no one else is looking. And unfortunately, people think that leadership is something that everyone can see, but leadership starts way beyond what's visible.
mhm,
It starts in what's invisible. It starts inwardly first.
mm,
It's really an assessment of who am I, what's going on in me. And even though I was not offended by what you said, I love the fact that you had an inner conviction to do
mhm,
something different, and that in and of itself is commendable. Real leaders understand that it may not be offensive to everyone else, but if it hurts or makes you feel icky on the inside, it's
mhm,
something that I must deal with, because I want to make sure that this doesn't become something that impacts my future. So just
mhm.
because it didn't hurt you now doesn't mean it won't hurt you with someone else in the future. And if you're going to be an effective, courageous, bold leader, then deal with you first so that you can lead others later.
That's wonderful, and you made me think about the fact that we were talking about a one-on-one,
Mhm.
but how often is the leader talking to a team of people? And
Yes.
so the leader may not have heard 8 people in the room, but there was that one person in the corner. Ooh, and so to have that sensitivity or to look around and see how people react to you, I'm assuming makes you that better leader.
You are absolutely right. John Maxwell says this, and I love this quote. He said, people won't go along with you if they can't get along with you.
Mm,
And I
mhm,
love that quote. There is a buzz, if you will, in the workforce now about trust.
mhm,
And I think that people are wanting trust, but they are not trustworthy. And
mm,
as a leader, if you are not trustworthy, you cannot expect your team nor your organization to trust you. And trustworthiness starts at, again, the internal work that no
mhm,
one else gets to see.
mhm,
It's who you are when the garage door closes. It's who you are behind the doors of your home. It's who you are when you're behind the doors of your office. Who are you? And when you can deal with that, when you can deal with that person and
mhm.
begin to do the work there, that's when you begin to show up. And leadership does not become what you do, it becomes who you are.
Okay, that's wonderful. Now let's take that and now bring it to the workplace. So you
Mm.
can work on these things within yourself, but how do you then show your team that you have communication competency?
Well, one of the things that I can respect about people is people know when someone is fake and phony. Like
Mm.
people can smell it.
Mhm.
They can smell inauthenticity from a
Mhm.
mile away. So to show up in your adaptive state at work and
Mhm.
not work on your natural state again comes across as inauthentic. What
Mhm.
you want to do is make sure that if you are a certain way in your natural state, that you begin to see not just your strengths, but also your opportunities for improvement. What
Mm.
are those things that you've been sweeping under the carpet?
Mm.
Let me take those things one by one and begin to work on them so that when I come to work, I'm not flipping the switch. I am
Mhm.
still true to who I am. I am authentically me. So I believe that it's really understanding who you are when again you're not at work. It's so funny because when we talk about professional coaching, there's no way that I can tell someone that life coaching is not involved in that
Mhm.
because professional coaching also involves your life, your personal life. It involves it's just all
Mhm.
intertwined.
Mhm.
And so I really want leaders to understand that who you are working on or what you are working on behind closed doors, it shows up in your leadership style. It
Mm.
really does. And when people see that you are consistent,
Mhm.
that's when you make impact.
So here's my next question. You're talking about authenticity.
Mhm.
How much vulnerability should a leader be showing?
Okay. So here's the thing.
Is
You
that
gotta
loaded?
have I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Okay. So because I sometimes people think, well, I don't want to come to work and tell people all of my business. And
Mhm.
I'm like, please don't. That's not what we're saying because everyone doesn't deserve your vulnerability. But it is understanding when and what to say and how to say it. There are some things that you may be able to uncover for your team members just a little bit of transparency or vulnerability to help them to understand that you want the same from them
Mhm.
and you can be trusted.
Mm.
So I do say I use that vulnerability with caution
Mhm.
in saying don't expose every single thing about you, but share enough to
Mhm.
let your team know that you are human and that you are willing to walk through with them through whatever they are experiencing and that you again are trustworthy.
I love that. And I love that everyone doesn't deserve, you said everyone doesn't deserve your vulnerability. Is
Yes,
that what you said?
yes. Because sometimes, Linda, we try to be super vulnerable with people who can't really handle
Mhm. Right.
all of our vulnerable places. Let's be honest.
We don't want to make people uncomfortable with what we're sharing.
Yes. It begins to, people start squirming in their seats like, oh, don't tell me anymore.
Why
We
did you
don't
tell
want
me this? Now,
So we,
let
we
me,
want to make sure that we are looking or observing the way people are responding to what we are sharing, and maybe even preface it by saying, "I want to share something with you, not because I want to give you, every piece of what's going on in my life, but I do want to share this with you just from a point of vulnerability, and I want to be as open and transparent with you as I am expecting you to be with me." I think that true leaders have that. If not, then you start to develop this space where people don't trust you, and if you're not trusted, then people won't give you every
Mhm.
all of them. They'll just give you parts that they want you to have, and unfortunately, those most of those parts are the unproductive parts.
Mm. And again, we talked about this already, but a good leader is going to be observing the people that he or she is speaking with and
Mhm.
picking up like, ooh, what I just said, I think made some people uncomfortable. Let's just pull it back a little bit.
Linda, I go back to what you were saying the other day, about our conversation, and I said, well, it didn't bother me, but I love the fact that you came to me because that was vulnerability.
Mm.
And so that it just kind of opened up even more so, not that I don't trust you already, but even more a different level of trust. And I so appreciate that.
Mm. I was just going to say the trust part of it. Now, here we go. I know we're talking, and we have to wrap up this interview. And I
Yes.
want to ask you the question that I like to ask all of my guests.
Okay.
And that is, what do you think is an essential skill to speak, sound, and look, and even act like a leader?
Oh gosh. One?
One, what do you think is the most? And there are so many.
There are so many. Being your authentic self.
Mm, okay.
Um, sometimes I think that people think that, um, uh, I can get this coach and sound like them,
Mm,
or I can, borrow a speaker's style and sound like them. I'll never forget. I heard this teacher one time, and I said, "Oh my goodness, that's it."
mm,
That's it. I'm going to sound just like that because I love the way she graced the stage. I
mm,
love the way she just talked and she was just so calm and it was
mhm.
so beautiful. It was just like, yes, this is it. This is the way I'm going to start doing from now on. Well, obviously that didn't work, but I I had to tap into my authentic voice. I had to allow space and honor the gifts that I have to be animated. And, my
Mhm.
facial expressions always talk for me. And whatever it is, or who I am, I embraced that. And I sharpened it because I think what people may sometimes believe is because you accept yourself for who you are, that means that you don't need to become better or develop.
Mhm.
That's
And
not what I'm saying.
Kashonna, what you did say that was very important is you don't need mentors are wonderful and role models are good.
Yes,
But so you can look at that woman and say, I want to be like her, but I want to make it me too.
yes,
Because there are
yes,
plenty of times I watch you and I sometimes want to be like Kashonna.
yes.
You take some of those, but then I can't be you.
Right.
I still have to be me. And I think that's great. So I love the authenticity,
Yes.
but I love to, you have to know that you have to speak in your own voice. And we all do, fortunately, have different voices.
Oh, wait, Linda, I have to say this because I think this is so relevant to what we're
Mhm.
talking about because I hear people saying, I don't want to code switch.
Mm.
And code switching has gotten a really bad name or
Mhm.
really negative press. But let
Mhm.
me tell you what code switching is. It is not changing who you are. It's understanding where you are.
Oh, I love that. I love that because I teach people to speak different ways, and every environment requires a different communication style and pattern,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's okay. So
That's okay.
we can have our
Yes.
vernacular with my New York accent. I just said that we can have our vernacular at home, but we might not bring that in when we speak to our team, and that's not inauthentic. It's making a choice.
That's right. It's
Oh,
understanding the environment. It's being again socially aware of where I am, and
yeah.
that's perfectly fine.
Yes. And so now I just want to ask you, how can people get in touch with you,
Oh my
Kashonna?
goodness. Yes. Well, you can go to my website at leadersmoveforward.com, or you can reach out to me at Kashonna, Kashonna, at leadersmoveforward.com. So just in case you forget that, don't worry. Just go to the website, fill out a contact form, and I'll be more than happy to help you in any way that I can.
Okay. And we'll have information when we post this again frequently
Awesome.
on LinkedIn. Kashonna, thank you so much. I love speaking with you. And every time we talk, I learn something new.
Thank you so much, Linda. Every time we talk, you extract something different out of me. So
It's true. It's true. I think, and I've said it before, I think we bring out the best in each other. And
me
that's what's so
too.
much fun about working together, presenting together, interviewing each other on our own
Yes, on our own
platforms.
platforms.
It's all
Yes.
wonderful.
It's
Uh,
amazing.
so thank you again. And
Thank you.
again, reach out to Kashonna, reach out to me if you have any questions.
Yes.
And
Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I so
oh,
appreciate
sure,
you. I don't take the opportunity for granted. Thank you.
I don't either. I don't take our friendship and our professional relationship for granted. It's
Absolutely.
very enriching. And please join us in 2 weeks on November 21st when John Dinkle, who is the founder and CEO of Dinkle Business Development, will be joining us. And this topic's a little bit different. We're going to be talking about leading by example,
Mm,
why CEOs need to excel at business development. So it's a different way of looking at it. So join us then. And again, Kashonna, thank you again. And let's hope that people have some excellent ideas how they can increase their communication competency.
Thank you again, Linda. I so appreciate you.
Okay.
Have a great day.